when people clinically die, their heart stops beating, brain waves cease, and yet they're resuscitated, whether by modern medicine. And we're talking sometimes after, a few seconds, sometimes minutes, but sometimes hours. I mean, we're talking about hours with no brain waves, and yet they come back, and what they say they experienced and how their consciousness lived on and what they experienced, it blew me away. So I picked this book up and I start reading it, and I couldn't put it down. I read the whole thing in one night. And my first thought was, wow, okay, this could actually be like medical scientific evidence that this afterlife and this God stuff that these people have always been telling me about, that it might be real. And so I wasn't convinced from that. I was just more open. And then I did start exploring more and studying more, and I came to faith in Jesus. I in time left engineering to become a pastor, really to start. I ended up starting a church 25 years ago for people like me, skeptics, doubters, strugglers, ordinary people, not people who are already convinced and already go to church, but really for people who, were where I was. And turns out there are a lot of them. And it's been really cool to see, honestly, because I do think when people are given space, safe space to explore, to ask hard questions, to wrestle, I think truth is really out there. It can be found. And yeah, so that was that was kind of my journey. Now, because of what you said, it was really true. Back in the 80s when I first started studying this, and I've over the last 3 decades, I've studied well over 1,000 cases of near-death experience, interviewed hundreds of them, a lot of them my friends today. And initially, people were very, very skeptical. However, what convinced me and what convinced many skeptical medical doctors even is that there's really great, hard, factual evidence that these are not just something that happens in the brain, that these are a real experience of a life that transcends our, finite 4 dimensions of time and space.
Absolutely, which flips people's beliefs on their head sometimes because the idea that, consciousness goes on, that the fact that there might actually be something after this life, aside from what we've been taught, in mainstream life as we go on, whether it's through religion, whether it's through, culture. So I'm curious about these. I was an agnostic myself, and I still am, and I'm trying to figure these things out. I'm curious, as far as skeptics, most people say that these near-death experiences are a result of neurological processes or a DMT release. What have you to say to people that say those sorts of rebuttals?
Yeah. So in my new book, Imagine the God of Heaven, chapter 2 is Science, Skeptics, and NDEs. And I address that because there have actually been about 30 alternative explanations. The common explanation that someone who has a near-death experience gives is that life goes on.